Welcome to the LEC podcast, a show about growing in connection with the earth and communities around us. Brought to you by the Living Earth Center in Mankato, Minnesota. I am your host and producer, Jacob Bases. Let's get growing. Update time. Spring has sprung, and there are a lot of opportunities for volunteers at the farm and garden. If you are a gardener, please refer to our event calendar at livingearthcentermn.org to keep up with meeting and orientation schedule. The website also has information for volunteer opportunities. April 20th is our garden opening, cleaning, and potluck event. All are welcome to help get the community garden ready for the 2024 season. We will lay down pathways, clean the barn and tools, as well as prepare partner plots. We will have a potluck around lunch, so please bring a dish to pass. You don't have to be a gardener to come enjoy some sunshine, fresh air, some work, and community. This event will happen rain or shine, so please dress for the weather. Today we'll be speaking with garden manager Mal Murphy and one of our board members and very active volunteers, Jim Ackil. So be sure to stick around and get to know what's sure to become familiar faces around the garden. Welcome to the show, Mal Murphy. She is our community garden manager, as I've already stated. Mal, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself and tell the listeners what it is that you do here at the Living Earth Center and what it's like up there at the community garden.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Mal Murphy. I am the garden manager at the Living Earth Center. So my location that I spend the majority of my time at is the community garden up at Good Counsel. So the majority of the work I do is basically organizing people and organizing land, kind of in a way. We have plots that have already been made that are up at the hill that have been used year after year. And it's kind of my job to figure out what gardeners are going to be in what spaces, things that are a little less interesting, like paperwork and that sorts of things. But I also am in charge of running kind of like our partner classes, whether it's through youth or the college here in town. What else do I do? And I also just kind of like upkeep part of the land, weed whacking, raking, organizing, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Just for a sense of scale, how big is the community garden and where does it sit?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly how many acres. I want to say it's 2 acres, but don't quote me on that. And it sits right up on Good Counsel, like I said, kind of up where the Sisters of Notre Dame used to have their location. So we're kind of like right off onto the right side of the road when you go up that hill. And we have a big red barn there, so that's kind of where we keep all of our supplies. And then we have some north plots that are north of the barn and then some plots that are south. And I want to say it's probably like 130-ish plots. Most of them are 10 by 10, but some of them have kind of like grown or, gotten bigger or smaller. And we also have a children's garden, so that's kind of like has taken up a majority of the space up there.
Rough estimate, how many gardeners do we have up at the community garden?
Well, it's not official yet because as of now, people are still registering. But each plot usually has 1 to 2 people working on it, depending on family members. So I'd say ballpark 200 people.
200 people.
Yeah, coming and going.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And what in general, like these are pretty close quarters. Is this a place where people get to know each other, or is it kind of like, do people kind of like come and go?
I think it's I think both. I think that people tend to stick to their schedule. There's the morning gardeners, there's the evening gardeners, and then there's the people who come between work, holidays, that kind of stuff. So there are times when you can go up there and there's not a single person around and that's kind of where I secretly like it the most because it's quiet and it's very, very peaceful. But then there are a lot of times where you can go up there and there's 30, 40 people working, especially if they're working on kind of like a volunteer group or some sort or an event. We have up to 60 people up there.
One of the things that I've learned a lot from just shooting this podcast and from working at the Living Earth Center is just how much food can come out of what looks to be a very small amount
Hmm.
of land. What would you generally say people are growing up there?
Honestly, I think that's one of the best things about the garden is that it's not, it's all different types of things because it's all different types of people who are coming from different parts of the world that have different types of produce. Like I think even people here in Minnesota aren't necessarily going to grow the same things as people who are in California or, tropical areas. But the majority of things are tomatoes because this is Minnesota, so there's a lot of tomato growing. Tomatoes, cucumbers are really easy. That's kind of something that I think a lot of people start with because all you really need is like a trellis and the seed packets, and they really do grow. And beans, um, yeah, you can get a lot of produce out of one 10 by 10 plot. And I kind of came in 3 years ago a little naive, thinking 10 by 10 isn't really that much space. But that's kind of why we start the new gardeners out with only 10 by 10 because it is a lot, and you do have to keep a lot of upkeep on that.
Sure.
Hmm.
I think probably in private, you've shared that like you're kind of like new to the gardening scene when you started all this.
Hmm.
Maybe recap a little bit of your journey, like from when you started to like some of the more important lessons that you've learned with your
Hmm.
hands in the dirt.
Yeah, that's a good question. I still think I'm pretty naive when it comes to gardening. Um, I never really gardened a whole lot when I was young. My mom and I did a garden, but it was not anywhere near to the scale that I'm working on now. Um, I think even now to put seeds into the physical ground and water them day after day and then actually come out with like a whole head of broccoli and then make that into a meal, it baffles me that I can do that. But yeah, I think I came in knowing that you needed dirt, sun, and soil. And now I've kind of grown to know like whatever's in the soil is going to affect how it grows, how much sunlight a specific seed needs versus another seed. But I'd say just even working with Jim Ackil, who's a volunteer and gardener, and Rosin, who also works for us as well, they've taught me so much that, I mean, even our library of books here. um, yeah, I think just knowing that each seed needs to be treated differently is probably the biggest thing that I've learned. I thought it was just kind of like an overall, everything is treated the same.
Sure. And one that I've been trying to ask everyone is how did you get involved with the Living Earth
Oh, that's
Center?
right. Yeah.
And what have you seen in terms of like growth, whether it be personal or community engagement, that has come from your time with the
Mhm.
Living Earth Center?
Um, I got started at the Living Earth Center through Melissa Martinson. I knew that I want to be part of some types of parks and recreation program. I had done some park ranger jobs before this, and then I had kind of made, I don't know if it was a call on Facebook or if I just reached out to Melissa personally, wondering if she knew of any work that I could be outside and also work with other people. Told me to apply for the garden, and this is what came of it. This is like my third year doing it, and I do really like a lot of parts. There's some parts that I dread, just like everybody dreads in jobs. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is how to work with people and how everybody is going to have conflict, even when I think this is interesting. Everyone's going to have conflict. And like, I think a lot of the plants that we're working with, I don't know. I feel like the plants and the people are working together because even some of the plants, to not have some of them grow next to each other because they'll smother or et cetera. Some need more sun. And that's kind of how I've dealt to work with the people up there is like, you got to keep some people away from others. Or how do you talk to different people, people's temperaments, that kind of stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing I've taken away so far.
Sure. Uh, Now, it seems like from maybe your education prior and working on like a much larger space of land, like the
Hmm.
state park or something like
Hmm.
that. Uh, what do you see as part of conservation and uh, that kind of uh, thinking with the planet in mind
Hmm.
for people who are doing a 10 by 10 plot or who are just getting into gardening for the first time?
I think it can be kind of overwhelming going into thinking like, oh yeah, let's save the earth, let's do what we can.
Mhm.
And I mean, even when it comes to people who are voting, you think like, oh, my vote doesn't count, whatever. But it really does matter. I mean, like, even we're such a small area up there compared to someone who would work in a state park or a national park. And I've learned to kind of realize that we're doing so much work with our little area of land. So even just your ability to be in your own backyard and grow vegetables there instead of having to go to the store and use the plastic, kind of like participate in consumerism and that kind of stuff. I feel like each little part that you can do on your own is like a major, major difference. I don't know if that made any sense, but
I think it did, and I
yeah.
think that especially growing things for
Mhm.
people is one of the ways that you can kind of, you know, I mean, when we look at like how carbon footprints are made,
Yes.
like, you know,
Yeah.
most of the things are largely out of our control.
Mhm.
But getting more in touch with the earth, I think, really does put people in the right headspace to advocate
Mhm.
for better change. So
Absolutely.
I totally agree that the more that we can do to you know, get people moving towards a healthier planet
Mhm.
is the right thing. And I think maybe my last like hard hitting question is, do you have any you know, like good memories or examples from your time up at the garden that kind of showcase what we're all about here at the Living Earth
Mhm.
Center?
Yeah, I think the thing that is most memorable that I continue to see is working with the My Place school here in town. They come up and they have their own garden. And even just simply having some of the kids ask, I kind of say, like, oh, what types of things do we want to grow? What types of things do we want to grow so we can later eat? And a lot of them don't even know that pasta sauce is made out of tomatoes, which is what you get from the ground. They just kind of see it as things you can buy from a store. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that have moved me almost to like tears sometimes when I'm up there, is that this is giving children like that an opportunity to see, the importance of doing something yourself and taking care of it and cultivating it, and then like later being able to feed yourself and your family and your community. So I think something like that. And also, as well as just so many different types of cultures and people who are up there and coming together and like not fighting. I mean, you look at the world, everything
Mhm.
is in conflict, and then when you're up at the garden, it feels like the most peaceful place in the world.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the world would be a better place if it was the Living Earth Center Community
Absolutely.
Garden. And why not put you in charge?
I agree. No, we'll put Laura in charge. She seems to know. Yeah.
um, uh, and you know, I think this is going to be my actual final question: is if anyone is still, are registrations still open, or did they close on the 15th?
They did close, but I think we are possibly going to be making a call out for more because there's a lot of open spaces this year left. So you can go register through the website. You can either find us on Facebook and the website link is in there, or I don't know our website off the top of my
It's
head.
livingearthcentermn.org.
Jacob's got it. So you can go in there and you can register. Otherwise, if you want to help out in other ways, you can just register as a volunteer, whether through our community farm or our community garden.
Sure. Well, Mal, thank you so much for joining us today. You totally knocked it out of the park, and
Thanks.
love having you up at the garden.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jacob.
All right, that wraps up our interview with Mal Murphy, and we're going to get rolling right away with our second segment of Jim Ackil. Here we go. Thank you for joining us, Jim. Jim Ackil is a volunteer with the Living Earth Center. He's been with us for a long time, so I've been told. And when I first started this podcasting project, I was immediately told you got to get Jim on the show. So long awaited, Jim. If you could please just tell us how you got involved with the Living Earth Center and what it is that you do here as a volunteer.
Oh, yeah. Well, I moved to Mankato around 2004 to be close to a daughter that lived here. And we bought a house on a ravine lot, my wife and I. And I left a large garden in our house in Illinois. I was a gardener for many years there. And the house we bought here in Mankato, there wasn't a place for me to have a garden. And that was the way it was. But my wife saw an ad in the newspaper, um, and it was for the gardens at Good Counsel. So that first year we were in Mankato, I went up and checked it out and met Lisa Coons. And at that time, there were two major plots or gardens up at Good Counsel. The south one had been there for quite a while, maybe 10 years, and the north one had just opened up. And Lisa said, well, you can come up here and garden. And I thought, well, I'll try it out. And gardened a couple of years up there and got to know some very great, wonderful people, good friends now, still friends, many of them still there. And at one point, maybe after a couple of years, Lisa asked me if I wanted to be on a committee that sort of oversaw the garden. It was called Sesrum. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. So I joined that committee, and we met once in a while, and the gardens just sort of continued. But then after about, maybe 10 years, the school sisters decided that Sesrum needed to be a nonprofit and make its way on pretty much on its own. And and at that point, we became the Living Earth Center. And I continued volunteering, and at a later point actually joined the board, and I'm on the Living Earth Center board now.
So in all this time you've spent hanging around the Living Earth Center and getting exponentially more involved, it seems, what how has it affected you, and what kind of effects have you seen it having on other folks in the community?
Well, it's had a great effect on me. When I moved here, I was retired and gave up some of my hobbies like golf and fishing and took up gardening pretty much full time. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And the first year I was at the garden, I met some wonderful people there that are still there and became friends of mine. And they're individuals from all over the world that have wanted to garden and didn't have a place to garden and began gardening up there. And it's been a joy in my life. Besides growing vegetables, which I love to do and I love to eat, I've learned a lot from other people about things that they grow that I didn't know very much about. I met some African farmers that grew a crop that was mystified by, and have become friends with them, and taught a number of people how to grow garlic that wasn't being grown up at the Good Counsel. And then also when I first joined the garden group, we had about a dozen plots that Lisa Coons decided to plant with food that we would take to Echo Food Shelf. So I became involved in that, and that was great because we could grow mainly tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and take them to various places in town and deliver them. And I've continued to do that at the farm, the county farm. We now do most of that donation producing at the farm. But I've met some wonderful people, and every year we have new gardeners, and I try to help them get going, and some succeed, some don't, but it's just been a great part of my life here.
Sure. And you mentioned earlier that you had moved from Illinois and you had a garden there, and presumably that was your own private garden.
Yes, yeah.
What is the difference in joining a large? I mean, there's like 200 people. I just spoke with Mal, and she
Yeah.
said maybe there's 200 people up at the community
Yeah.
garden, and then being at the farm. What's the feel like comparatively?
Well, gardening can be a very private experience, and where you can contemplate and think, but and that happens at Good Counsel a lot. But it's also a place where you can communicate with others. And so the main difference between gardening in my home in Illinois and gardening at Good Counsel is I can look forward to seeing friends up there. Bruno is an old friend of mine from the garden from 10 years back. And I look forward to seeing and talking to him. And we've learned about each other's lives and our children. And Lynn Rosen and Svetlana. And there's just a lot of individuals that have become my friends as a result of gardening there. I've also done a lot of seed starting. I don't know if people have told you that, but
Actually, that's one of the things that people have. They said you should do like a video or a class on seed starting with Jim. And I'm like, well, that sounds like it might be extremely complicated.
well, I'm hardly an expert at it, but I've been doing it a long time. I really like doing it. I have probably 600 or 800 seedlings in my basement now, and I probably have over 1,000 before I finish. But the reason I like doing it so much, besides being able to grow and start some plants that I couldn't ordinarily find somewhere. I mean, I like eggplant, and there aren't a lot of eggplant choices at nurseries. I like heirloom tomatoes, and I'm a sucker for ads on tomatoes. I buy new seeds every year, tried new things. But I also found that a seed pack contains 30 or 40 seeds. I only need 2 or 3 plants. So what am I going to do with all the extra seeds? So I just, over the years, have started to start more and more seeds. And I'll run into a gardener up at Good Counsel and say, hey, would you like some tomato plants? Sure. So I put them on my list, and I now have about 20, 25 individuals that every spring, it's earlier and earlier every year, I think, I contact them and say, hey, I'm doing seed starts. Here are my plants, 25 tomato varieties, 8 or 10 eggplant, 10 peppers. You want some of these? And then they write me back. And so I start them for my friends. And then later on in the spring, I give them a buzz and they come over and pick them up. They give me tips. Sometimes they'll even give me the seeds to start. So that's really been a joyful thing for me to do.
Sure. That kind of speaks to one of the things that I've been learning a lot through this podcast is, a lot of times there is a great deal of abundance. I've learned about the size of land and what comes out of it, and it's a lot more than I thought coming out of the, few acres that we manage here, and even a small 10 by 10 plot seems to put a lot, but knowing that even a seed packet has more than you need in many cases is a pretty nice thing to hear. Um, you said you have you gone deeper into your gardening practice since you gave up some of those hobbies that you were talking about?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes. I'm always trying something new. And this year I tried soil blocking, which is a technique. It's quite an old technique, but I'd never done it, and it's becoming more popular now. It's a technique where you mix up a bunch of potting soil with compost and maybe a little bit of fertilizer and some whatever peat moss, and then you put it into a device that compresses it into little blocks. So you make your own little seed pots, and it's messy. My wife refuses to come downstairs when I'm doing it because I spatter stuff all over. But I've tried that this year, and that's the kind of thing that with this hobby, there's always something new going on. There are new things to try, new plants to try, and the seed blocking. I'm not sure I want to continue doing that, but it was interesting.
Thank you for that. And could you tell us a little bit about your decision to get involved with becoming a board member? What led you to that?
Sure. Actually, what led me to be on the board was the fact that the school sisters, about 3 or 4 years ago, let us know that they were selling the property at Good Counsel, and that it was likely we were going to lose the gardens. And here was a place where I had spent 15 or more years gardening and loved being up there and had a lot of friends there. As you said, there were over 100 and some gardeners there. And what were we going to do? And so at that point, I talked to Laura Peterson, the director of the Living Earth Center, and said, is there room on the board for me? Because I really want to be involved in finding a new place for the gardeners. And she said yes, so I joined the board a couple of years ago. And I'm on a subcommittee that's involved now in trying to find a good new location if we have to move off the hill, which we likely will do. And in fact, even if we were to stay on the hill, Living Earth Center is growing and getting larger, and we could use more space anyway. So I'm involved in trying to find some more land for gardeners and our activities.
Uh, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. It is exciting time at the Living Earth Center. Everyone is kind of in this growth mentality here, not just because it's spring, but because I think there is some change in the air with the school sisters being out of Good Counsel, and there's a few pieces of news coming and going, hopefully soon. Um, I guess my final question is gonna be if you have any like stories or anecdotes, just something that sticks out in your head as something that happened at the garden that's just like fun to share and maybe even resonates with the values of the Living Earth Center. Interesting story about people coming together, or maybe someone who you met.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time working out the farm, the Blue Earth County Farm, which the Living Earth Center operates. And one year, I think this last year or the year before, I can't remember, we have a number of emerging gardeners, farmers that are just starting to grow out there, have plots out there. And I was helping one, and she was she was very busy, had children, and she planted an African crop, and it involves using, I think they're black-eyed peas, and I've since learned that she would scatter them and walk on them with her bare feet and stamp them into the ground. Well, she got busy and didn't take care of them, and the intern that was helping us that year and I decided we would help her, and so we replanted her beans for her, and so I did. I replanted them, but I planted them in rows, and I Jonathan, the intern, and I carefully made rows, and we put the bean seeds in the rows and covered them and watered them, and they came up. And when Ruth was the gardener that came back out there a couple weeks later, and they were sprouting, and she just laughed and laughed, and she said, I now have a European garden. It's all neat in rows. Yeah, that was an interesting experience because what I learned was there are different gardening practices around the world, and I had not been exposed to this one of just scattering the seeds, allowing them to come up. In fact, these are beans that they eat the greens and not the beans, and harvest the greens and use those in stews and so forth. But yeah, there are other experiences like that. Some of them don't have a happy ending. I mean, plants that I planted that don't come up, seeds that I've tried to start that never germinated. In fact, just before I came here tonight, I went downstairs and looked at them. I have two pans of impatiens, which are a flower that I like to grow. I planted over 100 seeds 2 weeks ago. Not a one of them has sprouted yet. So, that happens.
Sure. Well, that's all I really have in terms of questions for you, unless you have anything you just want to generally say to the audience about the Living Earth Center.
Well, the last thing I would say is we have an open house coming up. I'm not sure of the date, but I'm confident you'll let people know about it out at the farm. And the farm is a place where people can come and visit at any time. And they can do that at Good Counsel too. But at the farm, we welcome visitors, especially children, and we need help and we need volunteers. And it's, I should have said this earlier. I like to work out. I like to get exercise, and gardening is just fantastic in that regard. It's a full body exercise where you actually accomplish something in addition to your improving your health. Maybe I should end with that.
Sure. I mean, it's just another one of the bounty of benefits that comes from it.
It is.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better, and I'll be sure to make sure everyone know the date for that garden opening.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Jacob.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you find yourself in alignment with our mission and values, the Living Earth Center is a 501c3 nonprofit. Consider donating. You can find more information at livingearthcentermn.org.